This is Nasha Kasha, Ukrainian Almanac. 28 minutes of stories for everyone about Ukrainian life. Nasha Kasha is heard on 18 campus and community radio stations from Newfoundland to British Columbia. I'm your reporter, Stefan Andrusiak, and this is episode 204. At the heart of every cultural community sits an ethnic publication that interprets events for its subscribers. Perhaps more significantly, it also reflects from the inside out, points to priorities, explains issues for those outside the group, stands and defends against perceived injustices to the community. In the parlance of the 1980s, the owners of such newspapers were crusaders, journalists who did not wait for events to dictate what the story was. They set agendas, wielding their publications like shields on the field of public opinion. Today, a story about such a paper and such a person. It was recorded in Alberta with journalist Marko Levytsky and his wife Lesya.
I'm Marko Levytsky. I'm the former owner, publisher, editor of Ukrainian News, and currently Western Bureau Chief for New Pathway Ukrainian News, and National Affairs Editor of New Pathway Ukrainian News. But this is where you'll find the archives over there. We have it basically from 1981. I came in 1982, so the yearbooks are basically for when I was actual editor and publisher of Ukrainian News. Let's see what year I'll have.
How many volumes do you know? Have you counted?
Oh, quite a few, like from 1982. I still have to do the last few issues. I haven't gotten around to that.
You mean binding them?
Binding them.
Could you tell me where these archives will end up? Because they're in your basement right now.
I know. No, I can't. I'm looking for a museum to hide in. I was considering doing it with Okama.
That's an acronym. Give me the full name.
The Ukrainian Canadian Archives and Museum of Alberta. But
that would be fitting. I mean, this is where it all happened.
Yes, that would be fitting, but there's problems with the museum itself. It's not feasible at this time.
If this was the United States, I would suggest the Library of Congress. Is there an arm or a facility, a venue here in Canada? Because this isn't just a Ukrainian archive. This is something that is truly Canadian.
You just gave me an idea. I might contact the archives in Ottawa.
Or do fundraising. The Marko Levytsky Institute of Ukrainian Archives. What do you think?
This is where I worked. That used to be the secretary's office. I moved into the house in 2008, after our landlord decided to raise our rents, double them, and I moved into the house. For a while I had a secretary, and then she retired, and after that I just did everything myself, basically.
By moved into the house, you mean you moved your newspaper into this house?
Yeah. And the paper used to be run by the church, by the Ukrainian Catholic Eparchy of Edmonton. As an independent, I had it since 1988. I worked for them, for the Eparchy, from 1982 to about 87. It was losing money, and I had a few ideas of my own. And they said, well, why don't you just take it over? And I told them what I plan to do. Why don't you just take it over into your own business? I said, okay, I'll do that. Like all newspapers, circulation was going down. But by moving into my own premises, and by doing everything myself, basically, I kept the costs down very low. So I was able to, make a profit. I sold it for market value to the New Pathway, and we merged in 2017.
What was the secret in making it viable again from where the church had it?
We became inclusive as opposed to exclusive. When it was being run as the eparchial paper, they didn't want to have any news about the Orthodox. And you don't exclude a very big, portion of your potential readership. Switched over to a lot more English, and then eventually we developed our own base of readership, which is the Canadian-born. And of course, we concentrated considerably on things like culture, dance, etc., which is very popular here, and that brought up a lot of readership. News from Ukraine, news from the community, and also playing the advocacy role, in which case we would, we sent out a paper to all the MPs in Ottawa as well, and we would concentrate on Ukrainian issues and comment on them. In the beginning, there was the whole business of the denaturalization and deportation policy, which was an assault on civil liberties, especially aimed at Ukrainians.
For who were they after? They being the government.
Oh, this was back in 20 years ago. This was back in the late 90s, early 2000s. The government was after supposed war criminals, except the thing was they weren't charged with any war crimes. They were simply charged that they did not tell everything. They hid their past in World War II from immigration authorities. And the problem there was this was a matter of probability, 50% plus one chance, not beyond a reasonable doubt that criminal law has. They didn't bother charging them with any war crimes. So you'd end up with cases like, Levytsky, for example. He was forced into being a guard at a concentration camp.
Do you know his full name?
Yeah, Vasil Budinsky. And when I read the statement of claim, there was nothing against him except the fact that he served in this unit. But as it turns out, the facts were that there was a massacre at Travnik camp, and all the Ukrainian guards were locked up and told not to move, while the Germans committed the massacres. Odinsky was not, there was no charges brought against him whatsoever, just, guilt by association that he was a member of it. And that was the whole problem with that policy. Canadian media was just lapping it up, what the government was putting out in their statements of claims that these guys were alleged Nazi war criminals when they weren't charged with anything.
What eventually happened with Mr. Odinsky?
He was ordered that his citizenship would be revoked, and he was to be deported by cabinet, but cabinet never acted on it. So the matter was just left hanging until he passed away.
Do you feel that your editorial did broaden some knowledge?
Yes, I believe it did. In fact, eventually that policy was dropped.
So that was in the 1980s?
1990s, late 1990s, early 2000s.
Early 2000.
And quite, what I could say, which is quite revealing, was at one point I wrote an editorial telling our readers to throw out electorally defeat the Minister of Justice, Anne McClellan, who was actually in our riding, Edmonton West. And later on, at one meeting, she said to me that, you were always, she said basically publicly that she didn't always like what I wrote, but I was fair. So she herself understood that the policy was, was an affront to civil liberties.
Late 90s, early 2000s.
Yes.
September 2019, you're still writing editorials, this time to the Edmonton Journal, this time talking about the Russians trying to drive a wedge between Jews and Ukrainians in Canada.
Yes, and that's a very, right now that is a really big point because the Russian propaganda, quite powerful. They put a lot of resources into Russian propaganda. One story that comes to mind was recently this guy, Puglisi, from the Ottawa Citizen, wrote about this commemoration that took place at Sambir with some UPA veterans, and he wrote a story about how the whole Jewish community was upset about it, ignoring the fact that the chief rabbi of Ukraine was there at the ceremony, and this was done in conjunction with the Jewish community of Kyiv.
Point that you vividly illustrated in the Edmonton Journal.
Now, with the thing also appeared in the National Post, which is the flagship paper of the Post media chain, and James Temerty, who is the founder of the Ukrainian Jewish Encounter, wrote a letter to them clarifying what the whole thing was, and they wouldn't publish it. I guess the point is the National Post doesn't care because the Ukrainians don't form a large enough percentage of Toronto's population, so they wouldn't care.
But they should care about a story that's true?
Yes, they should, and
a version, a correction.
Yeah, they should. It's to their discredit that they did not publish that, and that's one of the problems we have when Russian propaganda gets through to the mainstream media. People actually believe it.
Владико неба і землі, a prayer. Edmonton's Dnipro Choir, celebrating its 65th anniversary. Marko Levytsky is the current president.
See, this is my mom and her older brother, and this is Evdokia. This is my aunt. Hello, my name is Nasha Levytsky. I am the wife of Marko Levytsky. My aunt is Evdokia, and she became a nun, a Roman Catholic nun, and she lived in Brussels and Lyon, France for her whole life. When my mom was having all these boys, she kept praying for me so that a girl be born. And so when I was born, my mom named me after her with my middle name. Yeah.
So you're an answer to prayers for your parents?
An answer for prayers, yeah. So she's always been very special to me.
So it's Lasha Evdokia.
Yeah. My parents were World War II immigrants, so they came after the war, and they were DP from Germany.
So displaced persons.
Displaced people. They came to Canada in 1950. I think they were in Lethbridge first. 1955, they came to Calgary. I have 3 brothers and just me. I belong to SUM. Everything was sort of focused in our church basement.
That's the Ukrainian Youth Association of Canada.
Correct. I belong to the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary Ukrainian Catholic Church. And so, you would go to Ridna Shkola on Saturdays, and then you would go to SUM and Ukrainian dancing.
I was actually born in Winnipeg. When I was 2 years old, my parents moved to Toronto, so I grew up in Toronto. I was a member of PLAS there. I went to Ridna Shkola and Kurs and everything.
In those days, I was quite involved with human rights, and there wasn't all that many Ukrainian newspapers, especially English writing ones, that I could reference to. Marko would write some stuff, and I'd be just, wow, this is great. He came to talk to the Susk University students in Calgary. He was invited to talk as a Ukrainian journalist, and I was in the audience, and I thought, oh, I like that guy.
Did you notice her in the audience?
In the audience? What audience?
Їжджу, ходжу і блукаю, мало би форкару маю, вітер віє, замітає дорожку. Запряжу я фордяка, куда йде, туди я, вітер віє, замітає дорожку. Поїхали до Єртону, пили водку, мали фону, вітер віє, замітає дорожку. Так пішов на сен з готела, сен каже, ring my bell, вітер віє, замітає дорожку. Вітер віє, віє, віє.
I had some raffle tickets.
The old raffle ticket ploy.
Yeah, I says, would you like to buy some tickets? And that's how I got his name and phone number, actually. But I came up to him.
And here's where you say, Marko, and I won the big prize.
And I won the big prize. Actually, she gave me an address and her phone number. the address turned out to be in the middle of an intersection. So
I don't know why I did it, but I gave him the wrong address because I didn't.
Довго там не заваджався, додому я забирався, вітер віє, замітає дорожку. Вітер віє, заверуха, залетіла вгару муха, вітер віє, замітає дорожку. Форденятко закурило, а потім ся і сказило, вітер віє, замітає дорожку. Ой, заїхав я на пені, там сидів я ніч і день, вітер віє, замітає дорожку. Вітер віє, 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 замітає.
But I gave him the right phone number. So I guess when he did come down, he had phoned from a phone booth saying, this address doesn't exist.
It would have been in an intersection because the street number stopped after, one block, and then they started out with the higher number later on. So I figured out, well, this is an intersection. If this address exists, it's in the middle of the street. One set of numbers stopped. The next set began after the number you've given me on that street. So that's why he said it was in the middle of the street.
She's saying that you didn't really have business, that you only had an excuse to come to see her.
Yeah.
Вітер віє, 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 замітає, тає, тає, вітер віє, замітає дорожку. Вітер віє, 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 замітає, тає, тає, вітер віє, замітає дорожку.
You're listening to Ron Cahoot, Canada's Mr. Music in the Ukrainian community, and Viter Vie, Vie Vie Zamitaye. The wind, it blows and blows, and it sweeps the street. Intersections included. Nasha Kasha comes to you from CHRW 94.9 FM on the campus of Western University in London, Ontario, Canada.
1, 2.
We're heard on CHMR 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland, on CKDU 88.1 FM in Halifax, on Local 107.3 FM in St. John, New Brunswick, on CJAS Radio 93.5 FM in Saint Augustine, Quebec, on CJLO 1690 AM in Montreal, on CFRC 101.9 FM in Kingston, on CFMU 93.3 FM in Hamilton, on CKMS 102.7 FM in Kitchener-Waterloo, on CJAM 99.1 FM in Windsor and Detroit, on CKLU 96.7 FM in Sudbury, on CILU 102.7 FM in Thunder Bay, on 101.5 UMFM in Winnipeg, on CJTR 91.3 FM in Regina, on CFMQ 98.1 FM in Hudson Bay, Saskatchewan, on CFBX 92.5 FM in Kamloops, on CIVL 101.7 FM in Abbotsford, and on CHLY 101.7 FM in Nanaimo, British Columbia. In the background, you're hearing the St. Nicholas Mandolin Ensemble from Edmonton. We opened our program with the Alberta Polka, performed by the Ukrainian Old Timers Band. It's from one of 29 of the band's albums available on Sunshine Records. And Kvitka Sizik singing Zhuravli, a song about cranes trying to fly home, knowing that they will perish in a foreign land. The song is often sung at graveside as a lament for veterans who wanted nothing more than to see Ukraine fly free. Still to come, Luke Koplowski from Toronto, singing his composition, My Heart is Full.
Well, I'm a registered nurse. The last 20 years here in Edmonton, I worked for Alberta Health Services it's called Community Care Access, and we took referrals for people who need to be placed in long-term care facilities, or we were the after-hours home care line. My earlier nursing was acute care, and then I did palliative nursing. And Kristina's my daughter. She's a teacher. She actually taught grade 1 in Ukrainian bilingual program, and I have 2 granddaughters, Kalina and Kyla.
Here you are with your granddaughter by your side.
Yes, Kyla.
I'm tired.
She brought it to her grandmother, not her grandfather, to solve this untied shoelace problem on her doll.
Yes.
How I ended up in Alberta. I was freelancing, and then I moved to Alberta in 1980 to work at the Bonneville Nouvelle, and in 1982 I was given the proposal to take over as editor of Ukrainian News. That's where it started with Ukrainian News.
So did she know you? She knew you were a journalist when you met,
Yes.
but had you taken on the role of publisher of Ukrainian News by then?
Yes, I was publisher of Ukrainian News. When we first met in Calgary, what I was talking about was just journalism in general, Ukrainian journalism, the need for community newspapers. I had some ideas, and I was sort of putting forward the ideas of what I thought, a Ukrainian newspaper should be.
So you meet this guy, you like him, he loves you, and you're on the cusp of a relationship, and he says, I want to own and publish a Ukrainian newspaper. Talk to me about that interaction. What were you thinking, and was it okay?
Well, it's very stressful. I mean, in terms of, providing for a family, it's not the most lucrative business. There's no benefits. That's why I needed to work, so we have the benefits. He was, relying on advertising. Like for me, that was how I, it's not an easy thing to do. But I mean, I was okay with it. I think at the time he was still pretty, before he became totally independent, that's when I got a little bit more nervous because, that's our livelihood. And it hasn't been easy because, he's working all the time.
Was it stressful?
Oh, yeah, it was quite stressful. I mean, especially deadline time. I had a much bigger staff because the process was a lot more complicated. You had to cut and paste the things, bring them to the printer. They would shoot negatives. They would make plates out of those negatives. Now you just sit at home, put it on a PDF file, and ship it through email. And it goes directly to plate. The advances were so big that the process became much simpler and much faster and much cheaper.
There was a point at which his landlord raised his rent, and he said, I'm moving the paper into our basement.
Well, that was because we were stuck. We were taking our first big vacation when this news came out, and we had to start getting things out of there, like all the pictures and photos and stuff that I wish I could just throw them out, but I know that someday somebody might want those pictures, and I'd have to realize what to do with all those photos of, he's got like boxes of photos of the people in the community. But it was very stressful, and then trying to find rent, and then in the end, was it my idea? I didn't realize it was my idea. Okay.
It was your idea.
Okay, well, I guess it was a good idea.
I know he plays piano by ear, and I remember from university days he plays the guitar. You like to sing as well. You're a part of a choir. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, I'm not like a big singer or anything. We did that together so that we would do something as a couple. Both belong to a choir. Because, he gets pretty isolated working from home, and it's good to get out and mingle with other people. He likes the guitar. He likes to serenade me with playing with the guitar and singing songs to me. Rolling Stones one, and Angie. Yeah.
How did you become the president of the choir?
They basically, actually, it was kind of funny because I was on leave for a year, medical leave, and the head of the nominating committee called me up and said, do you want to be on the executive? Yeah, okay. I said, okay, what position? And he said, president. Yeah, okay, I'll do it. I'll think about it. And I did it. Well, there's just a few ideas that I had about where the choir should be going, so I thought, this is a chance to implement them. Angie, when will the clouds all disappear?
Both of us had a little bit of health problems, so I'm right now currently not working. I mean, we both have cancer, right?
Is that okay if I...
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, right now we both kind of got sick at the same time, so I'm recovering from lung cancer. It was detected early, so, we're just being monitored right now. So that's my story. And Marco has prostate cancer, and he just finished his treatments, and we'll know a little bit more in the summertime how those treatments worked.
Well, we're wishing the best for you.
Yeah, so I mean, when you look back at things, like, I mean, I'm very proud of Mirko's work. He is very dedicated. I think it's been rewarding.
How cool is that? She likes you.
Yes, very cool. And I love her.
Oh, my heart is full. I'd like to kiss someone. And all people are beautiful. Yeah, so I'll kiss anyone. I just want someone to tell me that I'll be okay. I just want someone to hold me for 3 hours a day. Yeah, 3 hours and then cut it out. People always ask me, Luca, why is your heart so full? And I tell you, it's full of love and sorrow. People say I can fix that for you, but I say no. Do you have a heart I can borrow? Sometimes late at night, I get to be talking to my heart. I say, heart, why are you beating so fast? Yeah, I've been feeding you right. Yeah, but you just keep throbbing. That's not nice, I don't like that. Yeah, so I get stern with it. I say, stop. Oh, I say, go. I say, keep making my blood flow. But if it's not too much trouble, you just not let my feelings show tonight. Yeah, cause it's always the same question. It's, hey, Luca, why is your heart so full? And I tell you, it's full of love and sorrow. People say I can fix that for you, but I say no. Do you have a heart I can borrow?
I'd like to gratefully acknowledge that Nasha Kasha is supported in part by the Shevchenko Foundation and by the Ukrainian Credit Union. Back in a week, God willing. До милої зустрічі за тиждень часу, дорогі слухачі.
Yeah, it beats with a rhythm both airy and light. Yeah, light as a feather. Yeah, but I know that one day it'll be in pain. Yeah, but that's okay. That's alright. As long as you're here singing with me again.